Hey everybody, it's EJ from eyedesyn.com, and today I'm going to be showing you how to unroll a banner or a carpet or something like that. So you can see in a little render I got right here, I have some little banners or little pieces of carpet that are unrolled, making a little interesting composition right here. And a lot of people ask me about the unrolling when I posted my a couple tutorials ago where I did the most spline to animate an umbrella, and a lot of people was like, "Oh, show me how to animate everything." But I had a lot of people asking me how I got the little beach blanket to unroll. So slowly but surely, I'll break down this entire animation. But I'll start with the unrolling or the unfurling of the beach blanket. So I'm actually going to show a couple ways to do it. One's an easy way, one's a little bit more fun way, a little bit harder, but yeah. So here's our little unrolling banner thing here. And it's just a cube. I'm going to delete that, and we're just going to start from scratch. And we're going to start with the cube. So this is going to be the first very easy option to do this. And I'm going to start with the cube, and I'm going to go into my shading lines mode so I can actually see how many segments we have. And let's go ahead, and we're just going to make a carpet or banner or whatever the heck you want to call it. And just make sure that it's long enough, however long we want to make it. Let's do like 1750. And we'll make it a thickness of 10 because I'm very particular and weird. I need even numbers. I having decimals just freaks me out. So let's go ahead and let's go and just make enough segments here so when we actually deform this and roll it, we have enough geometry to actually make it not look chunky. So the way we're going to do this bending thing is, or the rolling is by actually using a bend deformer here. So, and every time you apply a bend deformer, if I just place this as a child of the cube here, I'm going to see that it's bending the wrong direction. It always does that. It always bends in the wrong direction. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And let's see if, yep, that's the right direction. So what I'm going to do first is fit to parent. And what that's going to do is fit the entire bounding box of my bend deformer to my cube. So now I can go ahead. I actually need to roll it like this. I can roll this and bring this strength all the way. All the way. We're going to have a really big number in here, or depending on how long your cube is. But basically, we're rolling this up. And right now, it's rolled into a very tiny kind of like tube. And you're seeing that we're not actually getting a roll of anything. The way we're going to get this to actually roll and not kind of overlap itself is by doing one very simple thing. And that is by just adjusting the rotation, the banking rotation of our bend. So you can see if I just adjust this 1 degree, we have a little roll of carpet or whatever this thing is. And you can see that as I increase the angle on our bearing, that we're now getting this nice roll. Looks like a cinnamon roll almost, or something like that. But this is all controlled by just a bend deformer with a very high strength and enough segments again, so you can see that. But however much you actually adjust the strength to get this all curled up, you need to make sure you again adjust and smooth out these segments. So this is a nice smooth little spiral kind of thing going on. So again, we can adjust this how we want it to get as tight a swirl as we want. But then to actually animate this, it's actually very, very simple. We're just going to simply move this bend deformer along the Y here. Or actually, what is this? This is, well, it's the Y axis of the bend deformer, but we're just moving it in the X of the object X. And you can see that, you know, you don't want to go too far because then it just starts overlapping itself, right? But basically, we just move this all the way to the right here, just on this Y-axis of the bend, and that is just unrolling our little banner thingamajig, or carpet, rolling out the red carpet here. So it's very simple. And you can also control how tight this is by actually adjusting the position in, what is this, the X on the bend deformer here. So you can have as tight or big of a little roll as you want, or as tight as you want, by adjusting this up and down on this little X-axis here, and then just making this unfurl by doing this. And you'll notice that as I'm moving this along this axis, and I'm making sure I'm grabbing this axis, you'll notice that it's moving both in the X and Y. So if we actually want to animate this, and we want this to unfurl, I'll just move this in the top position here. And actually, I don't know if we want to keep this Y-axis length just so we don't have any distortion or anything like that. But I think you're probably fine either way. Sure. But what we can do to animate this now is to, again, so when we're moving this, we're changing both the position X and Y. So we need to make sure we set keyframes in the X and Y. And then let's make this about a second long unfurling. So we can go ahead and, again, making sure I have that one axis selected, just move this all the way over to the right, make sure that it goes past, and then make sure I set keyframes for both the X and the Y. So now, just give this about 35 seconds. Now I just have this unfurling. And that's actually fairly fast. So I can make this maybe a 45 frame. Was I saying seconds? 45 frames. And there we go. So we can go into our timeline now. Timeline. Go. Right over here. And if I want to, I can adjust the curves to maybe not have an ease once we get in. So I'm going to go into my like F curve here. Let's just stay here in my dope sheet. So dope. And just kind of not make it so it kind of starts with a high velocity here. So it doesn't really ease in. It just kind of boosh. Unwraps, and you have to be careful that whatever you do with your curve in one, you match it with the other one, because you can see that if you don't, we have a little weird stuff going on right there. So you want to make sure that it's kind of consistent. So this is the one way to unfurl or unroll a banner with just the bend deformer, and it's very easy. You just have to keyframe the X and the Y of your bend deformer and just have it unfurl. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you actually make the cube, so say you do that and you're like, well, I actually want this either shorter or longer. Let's just say shorter. Say like that's way too long. You can shorten it very simply, but if you want to make it longer than you originally wanted it to be, maybe like way longer, maybe 3,500. You can see that we need to adjust all this. So let's go all the way to the back right here. And you'll see that even though we start right here, it's kind of unrolling over itself, and it's very, very odd. All you got to do is just make sure when you adjust the size of your cube to hit fit to parent again, and then we can start adjusting things over again. We're going to need to adjust probably everything. We're going to need to readjust that angle because fit to parent kind of X that all out. And then we'll just need to reset some more keyframes here and make this go far enough to make it unroll completely. But there we go. That's basically it. So that's option 1 for you guys. Option 2 is a little bit more interesting, and I have Chris Schmidt to thank for this, because ever since my little umbrella tutorial, I've been looking at. Let me just hide this for now. This is option 1. Group this. 1. Everything ever since I did my little umbrella Spline tutorial, I started looking into Spline stuff a little bit more, and discovered a little hidden option in Spline that actually is very relevant to unfolding stuff. So, or unfurling, uncurling, whatever you want to call it. So I got my Spline, and again, I'm just going to do the same thing where I make this long enough, however long I want my banner or my carpet roll to be. And one thing that is very important is this bend. You see, if I bend this Spline, it bends it all the way in a circle. But and if I keep going, it's just going to kind of tighten it up, but it's not going to turn into a roll. What I actually need to do, let's just make this 1500. Make that a very tight curl, but it's just kind of furling or bending over itself. What Chris Schmidt showed me is that everything has these little, you can barely see it because of my darker UI thing, but there's these little triangles, and you can untwirl and get more options. Now this is where the key to having the Spline do this uncurling really works. So we have this spline, and basically what this spline does is define where our bend, or the bend strength, and how it's applied along our Spline. So right now it's 100% bend throughout the whole entire thing, so it makes this perfect circle. But if I move this spline point down, you can see that at the start of the Spline, we have no curling, and then we get full curling towards the end here. So, I can start animating this or moving this point, but you'll see that it's not quite there. We're getting a little untwirling, but not really. What I actually need to do is create one more point here. And now, if I move this point right like that and set a keyframe, and I'm going to move, let's do 45 frames. And what I'm going to do to animate this is move both these 2 points over. So this point, actually, let me select both of them. Whoops. Select both the first point, like this, and there we go. We're now having this unroll as I move this all the way to the right. And you can see that right towards the end, it's getting a little weird. And what I found out is that you actually need to uncheck. I was just playing with all this stuff, and I was like, okay, well, if you uncheck the maintain angle, that kind of fixes that little glitch issue. I have no idea what's going on, but that's what fixes that. So again, it's not totally unfurled, so I can go and bring this even more, these 2 points right here, even more all the way to the right. And you want to make sure that you don't have 1 point overlap or anything like that, or move it too much, because you can see right like this, it just kind of screws everything up. So keep that in mind. So just by animating the spline option of this bend on the Spline, we have this unfurling. And we can adjust the length here. We can get a tighter curl by upping the bend strength here, just like this. And the cool thing with most splines that you don't typically have the other method is the fact that you have effectors and fields that you can use to affect that Spline. So this is like kind of it's a little bit harder to set up, but it's kind of worth it because you get all these extra options. So the first thing I need to do is right now I just have this Mo spline, so I actually need to have this affect that cube again. So let's go ahead and create a cube. And to be able to do this with the Mo spline, I'm just going to get a spline wrap and apply that to the cube and use the Mo spline as the spline wrap. Now I just need to make sure I have this right. Yep. I'm just going to make some whole mess of segments here and maybe make this, again, I hate decimals, so I'm just going to do 2. And then let's see what we got. So now we have the Mo spline with our spline wrapped cube. We can make this a little skinnier here. Maybe make this skinnier as well. So right now it's kind of overlapping. So a couple things we can do. We can either not make this bend so tight. We got a little bit of space in there, or we can kind of adjust this spline point morph kind of thing, where we have this closer. So you can see that this point, if I move, you can see how the point just slides and it's at this 0.8% or whatever value that is. What we can do is have this start out at maybe closer to 0.4. And you can see that gives us a little bit more space right there. Then we can probably tighten this up a little bit. So I'm going to hit a keyframe again, go all the way over, and then make sure that this is around the same angle. And what I'm going to do is show you the timeline. So when I set those keyframes in the spline field, let's go to the timeline here. And you'll see that by setting the spline keyframes, we have all this stuff, all these keyframes that were set that basically control the position of basically everything on our little spline here. Whoops. I just screwed a bunch of stuff up. Undo. Here we go. So let's see. Yeah, you can see that something screwed up here. And this has happened to me a few times, so I'm glad that it happened here. So if this happens to you, basically what happened is you have a point kind of moving, or this point here, this bottom point, moving faster than the middle point. So it's kind of getting ahead of itself and really messing up the spline interpolation here. So all you got to do is make sure that this bottom point is first, and this is second, and this top one's third. So we'll just hit another keyframe there, and we should. Okay. All right, cool. So back to the timeline. So the main thing is if you actually go into the F curves, you'll notice that there's only about 2 tracks here that actually do any movement. All the rest are just flat. So I'm just going to go ahead, go through all of these and just delete the ones I don't need. Actually, the Y I don't really need that much because Y is movement up and down. And really, I just want it to stay constant. So this I really don't need. The X is going to be the movement of those points in the X, so left or right. So I'm going to keep that. Don't need this Y or the TR or YTL. I have no idea what all this stuff is. Don't need the Y. The X2, I don't believe I need because that doesn't do any movement. Nor do these because these are flat tracks. So there's no movement, no change in value. So the only ones that I really need are the X1 and 3. And these are just controlling the position of the points in the X. So you can see that X1 is going to be this point, and X3 is actually the middle point because this is the X2, and this point that I added is technically X3. So the reason why I'm going over this is because when we want to adjust the curves of how this actually happens. So say we actually, just like the other bend, using the bend deformer, we want to have no ease in off the top. I'm just going to adjust just the curves of the bend spline X point X point number 1 and X point number 3, that middle point. And then we don't have that ease in. It just boom, zooms right out. So again, the cool thing with using the Spline is using these effectors. So now we adjusted our curves, we adjusted the animation of the bending. What we can do to actually make this animation even more fun is by like adding a delay effector, because we can use effectors on Spline. So let's go to the effector, get a delay, make sure it was applied to our Spline. It was, and we can do some fun stuff. And the most fun mode in Spline is the springy. Do some springy. And you can see that with spring set to the default 50%, we have this really nice kind of wave. That's pretty fun, right? So that could be some fun motion-y, graphic-y kind of treatments. And really crank this up and get really fun. Or, just go a little subtle. Less is more, as they say. So that's really cool. Or, so that's with deformers, right? Or with effectors. We can actually, again, use Spline with fields. So let's see, we can do all these particle forces. So one that is fun is like gravity. You can just have this go, whoa, whoops. You have this, just a very sad thing, or like a tongue, or like an unfurling banner, right? So that's with the gravity, just with its default. So that's kind of fun. So like unfurling a banner like that. Really crank this up if we want. Get rid of the delay. We can also have, so we have, like, if this is a banner, right? We can go in here and get rid of the delay again. Let's go and add some like wind. We can add some wind forces here and get this banner kind of blowing in the wind. Right now, this is too much. It's too much. Let's do one. Bring the frequency down. So now with the scale a little lower, see, it's not jumping all over the place, all willy-nilly like. Now we have our banner kind of falling, like so. And let's see what 10 looks like. That looks pretty cool. So now we have our turbulence, and we can add some. So I wanted to add wind, but I actually added turbulence. So that's fine. Let's go ahead and add wind. That's what I wanted. There's the wind. And crank this up and just have this blowing in the wind. And then the turbulence. That's fine too. So cool, we have like a little banner in the wind. We can turn this particle wind force 180 or so and get this flow and back. Looking good. So that's kind of the fun thing to do with Splines. Now, what we can do to actually make this not arc like this, we can go to our Spline and adjust this angle to, let's see, negative 80, I guess. Negative 90. I think negative 90. Yeah, negative 90. And now we actually have our banner falling the way we want. So that was that weird thing, why it was kind of like bending out like that. So negative 90. So the banner will just flop straight down. Let's get rid of the turbulence and the wind, just have the gravity working. Actually, let's bring the turbulence back in. We do want a little bit of like waviness happening. So now we have like an unfurling banner, right? So that's pretty dang cool. So say those of you out there who maybe they don't have the full version of R17 or whatever version of Cinema 4D, so you don't have Spline or anything like that. So maybe you have like I don't know if Spline's in the broadcast version or anything like that, but say you wanted that cool delay effector stuff to happen on your that option 1 we did. So let's go ahead group these objects together. This is option 2. Option 2. And just hide all that stuff. And let's get our original banner back with just our bend deformer. So this is the route that you'll go for most, if you don't have the full studio version of Cinema 4D, this is going to be your best bet. But say you wanted to actually have that delay effector, little bouncy stuff happen with this route. Well, you can still do it with this. You don't need to have a spline to do that. To be able to add delay effector to, and that nice springiness to our roll with the bend, is just go ahead and go to Effector, grab another delay effector, make this a child of the cube, but make sure it's applied after the bend, or after the bend. We got a delay here, and you're gonna notice nothing really happens, right? To actually get the delay effector to affect geometry, we need to go ahead and say we want this to affect and deform points. So right now it's set on delay. So it's set to blend. If I do spring, you can see that we get our nice springiness back, and that's because we have our deformation actually affecting the points of our object here. So that's pretty dang fun, right? Cool. So that's basically it. So we got 2 ways to unfurl banners or carpet, and one is with the just the simple bend and animating a bend and getting a nice little springy action with the delay effector, and the second option is with the spline, with that also with a spline with a spline wrap on a cube. And once you start adding some gravity and all these other fun things you can do, like effectors and adding particle forces, you can not only have an unfurling carpet or like red carpet kind of thing, but you can also have these fun little banners by adding turbulence and gravity and stuff like that. So that's it. So if you guys have any questions about this was 2 fun ways to do unfurling banners and objects and stuff like that. So start making some stuff. I want to see it, so share it. Always like to see what you guys are doing. But that is going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.